Yeah, I still can't do Instagram. I gotta get that figured. I gotta get that figured out. Gotta get that figured out. Figured out. Okay. Well, as this broadcast gets warmed up, the usual warning to everybody if you're coming in after the fact. See that timer? If you don't want to hear me jibber jab about all the things going on in the world of Siglerism, all you got to do is fast forward that to 0, a 0, a 0. And guess what? You don't have to listen to any of this jibber jab. Now we're still waiting to see. All right. Live on Facebook. We are live on Twitch. Cobalt, how you doing, my man? Cobalt, you're saying hi to the junkies, but you're the first junkie. So you're really saying hi to yourself, which is great. Cobalt's punctual, man. He's punctual. Always waiting for this to pop right on in there. Let's see. We got a couple Facebookers. Facebookers throw me a text, a message, whatever you kids call it these days. Just don't be sliding into my DMs. I'm married. Christ's sakes. How do I control you people? I don't know. You guys are wild. You're totally wild. YouTube appears to be going on. Edward Rocco in the house. What is up, sir? Brian Leach in the house. Brian and I had a great turkey day. Not only that, but I have had now 4 consecutive turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, lunch and dinners. Unless you count the times that I put the turkey on toasted potato bread, and then I had a sandwich. There's been a lot of turkey. A bought a whole extra turkey for the house because she knows what a glorious, glorious time of year this is. Progder, how you doing? It looks like a new name. I don't know if we've seen you around here. Martin Evans in the house. What's up, everybody? We'll let a couple more people pop in here, and then we're going to do our usual housekeeping, letting you guys know everything that's going on before the story. So after the story, we will have none other than Christoph Laputka, the mind behind the Leviathan Chronicles and the soon-to-be-released Invenius Expeditions. It's going to be great. Oh, hello, everyone. Hello. Recluse Mage in the house. Glad to have you back. All right, people start pouring in here. We'll just jibber-jab for a couple minutes. And I just watched a show on Netflix called Interior Chinatown. Absolutely, no, it's on Hulu. Interior Chinatown, absolutely bizarre show. If you get Hulu, check it out. It's like meta within meta within meta. Very weird. Some really fun performances in it. Brian Leach, I do not go the whole turkey dinner on one sandwich. Green bean casserole, always on the side. Stuffing, if any, always on the side. Taters, always on the side. However, I will do the turkey on the turkey lettuce mayo and slather the cranberry sauce all over that. It's delicious. It's the best stuff in the world. David Lamb, preparing for tomorrow's big game against the Packers. Here's the thing. Because of the rescheduling of my cousin's band Superweapon playing live tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, which you can watch if you are so inclined at youtube.com/Wildcat Guitars. I don't know that I'll be able to watch the game. I roadie for my cousin, Minister Merciless. He has his own church. It's a little weird, but you know what? I don't judge. As an atheist, I don't judge one way or another. So a real girl herself will be here probably texting me updates on the game, which will make the first Lions game I've missed this year, if I have to miss it, because it could be on earlier, or since poor little Squeaky had all kinds of problems with her teeth and I had to run her to the emergency vet. And even though I had all my Lions gear on, I had to take the pup to the vet, get that done. But it's going to be a tough game for the Lions. Lions defense is very, very much banged up. It is going to be difficult. Let's do housekeeping. Let you guys know what is coming down the pipe. Let's see. I told you about the live stream, youtube.com/Wildcat Guitars. That is tomorrow, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. The Funko Keeling is now in the store. Let me see if I can get that up. If you are a Lego person and you like small little Funko things, get it going. All products. Boom. Let's go to upper right. Nope. Shoot. I've goofed that up. We'll just go to guest. Well, can't do that. Let's go back to, I'll show you later. He's got a sneak peek of Christoph, who's lurking about in the green room, ready to come in and do his thing. But I'll show you that when he comes on. A smaller version of the Keeling, all done in Legos. It is very cool. That is up in the store. Go to scottsigler.com/store. You can download the plans. The plans are free. The parts we don't provide. You have to go get those on your own, but there's a parts list with that too. But we give you the plans and parts list for free. I'm working on the Crypt Book 2 second draft. I've added 2,633 words so far to the first draft, which ain't bad because I'm a quarter of the way through. Usually I've added 20 or 30,000 words by this point. We are trending towards 131,000 words in the book, but that could jump like crisscross. Sunday, December 1st, the 7th day of Deer Camp, part 1 went into the podcast feed. Wednesday, today, December 4th, Deep Cuts 27, Where Do Readers Get Their Book Recs, went live in the feed. Once again, if you don't want to hear this stuff, fast forward to 0000, and you can get right into the story time. Saturday, December 2nd, let's go to Maine, and then where is the iceberg action here? Junkie Party. And yes, Steve the Iceberg, Ricky Berg's Junkie Party will be happening this Saturday, December 8th, 4 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. Eastern. He is a glutton for punishment, man. He will just sit there and host people all day long, so you want to check that out. And then Sunday, December 8th, tonight's episode goes live in the podcast feed. And then Wednesday, December 11th, a brand new experiment here in the world of Siglerism. A Real Girl herself and I will be live reading the Ancestor prequel scripts. We did this as a user-generated video contest many years ago. I wrote 4 scripts. People got a chance to go shoot any one of the scripts they wanted to in any way they wanted to and enter a contest and win a bunch of stuff. We're going to read those scripts live next episode as part of Death is Black. So tune in for that. Watch live theater, live in the live. There's a lot of live going on. We've never done it before. We will see how it goes. She will do the female parts. I will do the male parts. So none of you sons of bitches can be making fun of my female voices. Right there. Right there. That's what you got right there. And then after that, we are going to have Santa No Pants. It's a delightful Christmas tale. It will be taking place in the setting of Parrish, Michigan. And then that's next week. And the week after that, we're going to have the awesome George Hrob on as a guest. He's on to promote his his Christmas album titled Stocking Stuffer. So George tends to have a little bit of dirty lingo going on with all of his songs. He's fantastic. If you guys have never seen George, you are missing out. What a phenomenal performer, phenomenal human being, great guy. A and I are super pumped to have him on. Let's go back to openness, get rid of, boom, get rid of that. That about does it. Now we're going to get into all of the things. We have 1 minute left. So, of course, if you guys have ideas for deep cuts, topics you want us to cover, send that to info@emptyset.com. And any question in general about Siglerism or any of the properties, you can go ahead and throw an email there. You should be signed up for our SMS list. Text SIGTEXT, one word, to 855-955-5095. You get a 10% off coupon to buy anything you want in the store that we ship. We don't control the prices over on Amazon and all of those other places. And going to get my newsletter game together one of these days. You should also be signed up for the newsletter, scottsigler.com/newsletter. Why? Because we can't count on Facebook to show you stuff anymore. We can't count on Twitter's gone, dead. We can't count on any of the social medias to actually show you things. So if you really want to stay up to date about what's coming out, what books are pending, etc., that's where you want to be. And then I am doing still some social media stuff over on threads.net/Scott Sigler, but not a whole lot, trying to really focus on the writing these days. All right. That takes care of our housekeeping. I got a hot toddy. A and I are a teensy bit under the weather, but not enough to stop this show. Hell no. Okay, let's go to Maine. Let's get ready to rumble. Okay, go back to my Death is Black up there. Boom. Let's get rid of this. Okay, junkies, here we go. Steve, I am hitting record because I'm smart like that. It is working. Let's get our teleprompter up. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to rock and roll. Previously, on the days of deer camp. For 2 decades, childhood friends George, Toivo, Bernie, Jocko, and Bernie's father, Mr. Ekela, who basically raised all 4 boys, spent an idyllic week at an isolated hunting cabin in Michigan's gorgeous northern peninsula. This celebration of family, friendship, and tradition turned to dust when an alien spacecraft violently crashed near the cabin. After their cabin was destroyed, George and the others took shelter from the murderous 40 below cold in the only place they could, the crashed ship itself. In that ship, among the mangled corpses of adult aliens, they found survivors. Alien children who lived because the adult aliens had placed them in the ship's limited number of crash seats. Jocko shot one of the kids, killing them, but George protected the rest. George then made a fateful call that changed his life forever. And now, the conclusion of the Days of Deer Camp sequence. George finished his call. Or rather, the call finished for him when the signal dropped. The bars vanished and didn't return. He was pretty sure he had given good directions before he'd been cut off. If so, he would find out soon enough. Through the hull's cracks, the wind eased from a howl to a scream. Through the hull's cracks, the wind eased from a howl to a moan. The storm dying down, like all storms do. He heard Toivo arguing with Bernie. George couldn't make out the words Toivo sounded pissed. Maybe he was campaigning for the others to join him, to murder the children. Exactly how far was George willing to go to stop that from happening? Don't know what to do, he said. The children didn't answer. You guys are a big help. The words turned to white as they left his mouth. Temperature dropping. Winter's fist was slowly squeezing tight around the wreck, snatching away what little heat remained. The children, they were shivering. From the cold, maybe, or maybe from fear. He terrified them, which was fine because they terrified him. A human shape that can never be mistaken as actually human. 2 arms and 2 legs, but thin, so thin, tree branches come to life with fluid motion. Black eyes, 3, not 2, set in heads too big for the death camp skinny bodies. And those mouths. George did all he could to not look at their mouths. An hour passed. A banging on the door. The sound reverberated through the room, bounced off the 12 crash chambers or shock seats or whatever the capsules that had kept these children alive while their parents had been turned into paste. The children flinched at the sound, huddled together, made noises that sounded frightened and pathetic. George unslung his rifle. He held it nervously in both hands. He thought of slinging it again. Was he going to threaten his lifelong friends or something? The pounding came again. George decided to hold on to the weapon. He pushed the door open. There stood Toivo and Jocko. Toivo, who had already executed one of the children, and Jocko, little Jocko, who had shown more bravery than George and the others combined. Give me your phone, Toivo said. George didn't move. Jocko stared past George, at the children. He hadn't seen them yet. The man seemed oddly calm in light of the situation. George wondered if Jocko wanted to kill them, just like Toivo did. "The phone," Toivo said, holding out a hand, palm up. "Bernie's phone ain't got shit for signal. Mr. Eckler isn't doing great. We need to try to get help." George nodded absently. "Already called someone." That caught Jocko's attention. "Who?" "Ambulance," George said. "That's part of the deal." "What deal?" Toivo said. George was suddenly unsure if he'd given enough info before the call cut off. Did they know where to go? I had a signal, but it's gone," George said. "I made a call. Help is coming." Toivo's eyes hardened. "For the last time, Georgie, give me your phone." Any pretense of friendship had evaporated. 3 decades they had known each other. Come here every year to reconnect. Shared all the experiences life had to offer. It was all gone. If George had raised his rifle as Toivo had, if together they had slaughtered these helpless beings, that friendship would have been strengthened beyond any measure. George had chosen otherwise. He pulled the phone out of his pocket and handed it over. Jocko and Toivo huddled around it as if it had a secret warmth that might chase away the encroaching winter. "No bars," Toivo said. He looked at Jocko. "And it's almost out of power, eh? What are we going to do? How do we get Mr. Eckler to the hospital?" Jocko stared at the phone for a moment, perhaps hoping for a connection to suddenly appear. He shrugged. "I don't know, eh? Maybe we can see if the snowmobile made it through the explosion." The 3 men and the 11 alien children fell silent. In that void, the sound of the wind dying even further, from a moan to a whisper. And through that whisper, another noise. The faint, growing whine of a distant siren. Jocko and Toivo looked at George. "You called an ambulance?" Toivo said. George nodded. Jocko shook his head. "There's a fucking alien invasion, and you got an ambulance to come out to the middle of nowhere? How? And the roads are snowed shut. How did you pull this off, Georgie?" George shouldered his rifle. He felt nervous without it in his hands, naked, as if his friends might suddenly aim and fire, taking more innocent lives. He glanced at his friends' weapons, until they got the hint. The attitude of both men had changed. Somehow, George had got help for the man who had raised them all. They both slung their rifles. "Let's get outside," George said. "It'll take us at least 30 minutes to hike back to the cabin, or what's left of it. We need to be there when they come, or they might drive on by." George would later learn that the alien attack had failed within the first 12 hours. Ships had appeared out of nowhere over the skies of the biggest cities in the most advanced nations: Beijing, New York, London, Paris, Moscow, Mumbai, Berlin, and more. Trouble was, the most advanced nations had the most advanced militaries. Air-to-air missiles blew flying saucers out of the sky, turned them into flaming wrecks that plummeted into the cities below. Some U.S. pilots said it was like shooting down a space shuttle, a target that couldn't dodge, that exploded easily and spectacularly. Others used more colloquial terms. It was like shooting flaming arrows at hydrogen-filled fish swimming in a barrel of jet fuel. Maybe the plan had been to take out the strongest first, in hopes that the weakest would surrender. Whatever the reason, it turned out that the great military minds of the attacking aliens weren't all that great. Some guessed they weren't military at all. Sociologists theorized that the invasion was more religious than military in nature, that it was more the covered wagons of armed civilians crossing the Great Plains than it was the landing craft of D-Day. One thing seemed certain. Ships that attacked were not built for battle. Now it was assumed that the aliens had gone to war with what they had, because they had no place else to go. The children were proof that their species could breathe just fine on Earth. After some trial and error, they were able to safely eat many kinds of food. The aliens, so the theory went, had to abandon their own planet, and Earth was the only place they could reach. They could have tried to communicate, but instead they declared war and paid dearly. The conflict had been so fast, so decisive, that the only alien ship left intact was the one that hadn't fought at all. The one that crashed not far from George's hunting cabin. Some assumed it was destined for Chicago before the malfunction brought it down. Every other vessel had been engulfed in flame, then hit the ground like a bomb. End result? Very little material remained intact. Very little material and no survivors, save for George's 11 charges. Through the thrice daily interviews, George had learned there were no... Hold on, guys. Babe, can you get them out of there? They're scratching. Dog situation. Sorry, here we go. Through the thrice daily interviews, George had learned there were no known alien survivors except for the children. That made them beyond important, an immeasurable resource. If there were other survivors, they were locked up tight in some secret government location. People speculated that was the truth. George was one of those people. The invasion had changed the world, but not in the way sci-fi authors or great intellectuals might have predicted. Governments didn't come together. If anything, they were more divided than ever. What changed was the people. The people came together, ignoring racial and cultural divides. They came together with one common interest: absolute distrust of authority. Among the countless conspiracy theories was the top dog of them all, that governments knew what had been coming and hadn't warned their people. Theories like that weren't new. They'd been part of the populace since governments had first formed. What was new was a technology that no government could completely control: the internet, cell phones, local networks, people organizing, encrypting, working together as one against anything that smacked of authority. Working together as one against anything that smacked of authority. In the years before the invasion, people had come to fear their governments. Now, the governments feared the people, and with good reason. George, Toivo, and Jaco stood by the ruins of the hunting cabin. It had been the centerpiece of their friendship for 3 decades, the centerpiece of Mr. Ekla's relationship with his own childhood friends for the 2 decades before that. Over half a century of tradition, now nothing more than shattered timber and scattered camping supplies. The wind's ebb hadn't lasted long. Whitened treetops swayed slightly. The woods were here before people came. The woods would be here after people were gone. The woods just didn't give a shit about any of this. Those trees bracketed a long stretch of white. The road, thick with snowdrifts 3 feet high. Motionless waves in a snapshot of a frozen ocean. And coming down that road, a moving spray of snow rising up in grand arcs, crashing to the sides in puffing clouds of white that caught the morning sun. Through those clouds, a pulsating orange light. Ambulance lights are red, Toivo said. Not an ambulance, Jacko said. It's a goddamn snowplow. Let me guess, Georgie, an ambulance is right behind it? George nodded. I sure hope so. The flashing orange light came closer. As it did, the 3 men could make out the cabin. No. As it did, the 3 men could make out the snowplow itself. Highway maintenance orange seeming to surf on a flowing, crashing wave of snow. Toivo turned to George. How'd you get a snowplow to come out here, eh? Jocko laughed. The first time that sound had been heard since the alien ship had torn open the night sky with a boom so loud it shook the ground. Because it ain't just a plow into ambulance, he said. George hadn't called the police. He hadn't called the military. Not that he would even know how to call the military or if such a thing was possible. And he hadn't called an ambulance. Not directly, anyway. George had called Channel 10. The attack had hit major cities. As far as George knew, Houghton and Hancock, the closest cities of any size at all, had not been hit. The hospitals wouldn't be flooded. The ambulances wouldn't be swamped. He hoped that if he acted fast enough, he could put someone to work getting the resources needed to help Mr. Eckela. Not knowing how long his connection would last, George had talked fast, not caring who answered the phone, hoping that whoever it was could remember all the info. He had been so nervous, he'd been shaking. He'd known, somehow, that he was committing himself to something big, something long-term. The words had rushed out of him. He'd heard his own voice as if there were 2 of him, one speaking on the phone, the other listening to every syllable. I don't have long, so take notes. My name is George Pelton. I grew up around here. An alien ship crashed near my deer camp. It came down during the storm. No one saw it, but you don't have much time before the major networks and the military come. I can show you the ship. I have alien survivors. I can put them on camera. If you want this story, you need to get here as fast as you can. The roads are all snowed in. Find a way to get here. You have to bring an ambulance and no police. If there isn't an ambulance, I won't show you. If there are police, I won't show you. 1 reporter, 1 cameraman. I'm giving you 3 hours to get an ambulance here, or I'm calling Fox News. George had given the cabin's address. Then the signal had dropped. Even if he'd had a full cellular connection, how many calls would he have to make to try and get an ambulance and a snowplow out here? Would anyone have even listened to him? Maybe, maybe not. But a reporter, a motivated reporter, would do anything in his or her power to make it happen. That had been George's guess. And from the way things turned out, he had guessed right. Paramedics worked on Mr. Eckela. George was still in the room with the children, but had caught a few snippets of conversation, enough to know that Mr. Eckela would be all right. George's friends clustered around the old man and the paramedics. Other than a smile from Bernie, knowing nods from Toivo and Jacko, the 3 friends' way of saying thanks to George, they didn't give a damn about the reporter, the cameraman, or the alien children. George stood in front of the children, who clustered together, cowering. Maybe they didn't know the difference between a rifle and a camera. How could they? the last time a human had pointed something at one of them, one of their friends had died. Surprisingly, George recognized the reporter, a woman named Nancy Oostergaard. Even though he didn't live up here anymore, he'd seen her face on billboards in the area. That was because she wasn't a reporter at all. She was the nightly news anchor. Maybe the anchor of a small town station didn't have a lot of pull in the national scene, but she had enough to be the one that drove out on the freshly plowed road to do this shoot. "Mr. Pelton, are you ready?" Nancy asked. George nodded. Nancy stood by him, her left shoulder almost touching his right, a microphone in her hand. The cameraman resettled the camera on his shoulder, then switched on the lights mounted atop the rig. The small room lit up. The children squealed in fear, clutched at each other even tighter. 4, 3, 2, the cameraman said. Nancy took a slow, deep breath through her nose, let it out even slower through her mouth. "This is Nancy Oostergaard, reporting live near Eagle Harbor. I am inside a crashed UFO, the same kind that laid waste to cities all across the planet. This ship actually has 10 survivors, the first we've heard of through the sporadic reports coming from across the planet." George watched the cameraman step to the side, trying to get a shot of the children. The children saw this. As a huddled, mewling pack, they moved to keep George between them and the camera. "Yes, these are actual aliens," Nancy said. The camera swung back sharply, locked on Nancy and George. "They were discovered by this man, George Pelton," she said. "He was here on a hunting trip with his friends. Mr. Pelton, could you describe what you saw the night this ship crashed?" The camera's small light burned brightly, nearly blinding George. How did reporters stare into this night after night? Was he on local TV? Or was this signal carried across America? Across the world? He shouldn't be doing this. He should be in the other room with his friends, helping get Mr. Eckela through the deep woods into the ambulance waiting by the cabin. "Mr. Pelton," Nancy said, "this is a live signal. I'm told we're being watched all over the globe. Can you describe what you saw?" George took one look behind him, at the children, cowering, terrified. He looked at the walls, at the crashed seats the children's parents had used to keep their beloved little ones alive. And in that moment, something deep inside of George awakened. Awakened and took over. He looked dead into the camera. "These kids haven't done anything. They're helpless. They're innocent. Everyone watching this, we can't let the government get them, cut them up, study them, whatever. What if they were your kids? Would you want your babies butchered?" The cameraman moved again, tried to get an angle. The children were too many to fully hide behind George, but they tried anyway. George took one step toward the camera, leaned toward the lens. "They're just kids," he said. "I'll stay with them, try to keep them safe, report to the world however I can, till we know they won't be killed for some experiment. I'll stay with them. The government lies. I don't." If only he had known the way the world would interpret his words. If he had, would he have said them? "Mr. Pelton, ready to go in?" George stared at the airlock door, at the guard standing next to it. Behind that door lay the ruined ship. In a matter of days, the Army had built a huge pole barn around the wrecked vessel. Within a week, they had built a second building inside the first, one that covered the alien vessel like a shell. That's where George was headed now. The dead bodies had been removed, the debris cleared away, and the wreck had been scanned for radiation, poisons, gases, anything that might harm a physiology humans knew very little about. Nothing dangerous had been discovered. Not knowing what might hurt the aliens, the government scientists had decided to leave them in their own ship. Mr. Pelton? Yes, George said automatically. Thank you. I'm ready. Thank you. Ever the Midwestern boy. The guard nodded. He wouldn't be coming along. Another guard would be waiting inside, this one in a hazmat suit. Everyone entering the wreck wore one. Everyone except George. The children had been exposed to him, after all, and he had been exposed to them. George knew that if he left to see his own children, he wouldn't be allowed back in because of potential pathogens he might bring with him. New bacteria, contaminants. The government would have a reason to cut him out of the picture, to tell the world that he was now a potential danger to the children instead of their protector. If not that reason, they would find another. If he left this place, it was over. George often wondered why he'd said the things he'd said when that camera light flicked on. He'd never been very political, never believed in any conspiracy theories. At least not before all this started. He'd never been involved in local government. He hadn't even watched the news. Yet that diatribe had flown out of him almost as if he'd written it in advance. It had made him a global sensation. The brave, selfless protector of alien children. It also made him very much alone. The airlock door opened. As expected, inside awaited a hazmat-suited guard. George knew the children would be happy to see him. They would cling to him, as they always did, ask him questions in a language that he didn't understand. The few words he'd learned weren't enough to convey thoughts of any complexity. But he didn't need to be fluent to understand what they wanted. They wanted to know when they could go home. Trouble was, they were home. They were never going to leave this place. And if George stayed true to his word, neither would he. He stepped forward. The airlock door closed behind him. That concludes the Days of Deer Camp sequence. Lots of stories in there. 6th day of deer camp. No, 5th day of deer camp. 6th day of deer camp. 7th day of deer camp. It's a lot of camp. A lot of deer camp. A lot of deer camp, you guys. All right. Pardon me. A little burp. Get this down. In just a few moments, our guest, Christoph Lapuka of the Leviathan Chronicles, will be on. Everybody hang out one sec. I forgot one part of prep, which is to get the correct chairs. Baby girl, come on up if you're listening. Talk amongst yourselves. Sorry about that. That must have been very loud. Very sorry. All right. Baby, you good? Okay. All right, all right, all right. Let's see. I get my headphones back on now. Okay. Barbecue. Michael Moore, you're not allowed to eat the alien children. They're sentient beings. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. Oops. Turn that off. All right. A is coming up here in a second, and then we're going to get Christoph Lapuka on, and we're going to have us just a generally good time. That's what we're going to do. So now I can bring A's microphone back on. Boop. Works great. Hello, baby girl. Let's go to
Christoph.
A cam. Thanks, Pumpkin. Oh, little scotch for everybody. Just a few more seconds, y'all. We're very excited. We've known Christoph for quite a long time. Super pumped to have him on. Let's get our camera dialed in, sweetness. I might be electrically charged. Listen to this.
I hear
Something's going on. Something's going on.
Well, that doesn't.
I'm almost as charged up as when you walk in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to get the recording up. File open recent. Deep Cuts 28. Close. Save. All right. We still got to do the deep. Did you bring a script?
I did.
Okay. As you guys know, this is the part of the show where we do deep cuts. There's no story involved in this part. Please hang out, though. We're going to have a good time. But if you're only here for the story, you can go do your thing. And all right, Baby Ray, set that timer.
I am ready.
Okay, here we go. Did you read through this, by the way?
I did.
Good. Okay, ready, and let's get this recording. Okay, set. In a world where the planet's greatest treasures lies at the bottom of the ocean, and you, some lovable loser schmuck with a big dream and a bigger boat, ready to go get it, no matter what the cost.
Wait a minute, movie guy. That sounds like the intro to the Invenius Expeditions by the creator of the Leviathan Chronicles, one of the world's most popular fiction podcasts. Is that what you're talking about?
In a world where Movie Guy is out of ideas, you may have hit the nail right on the head.
I thought so. So we'll be back with Christoph Laputka, creator of both the Leviathan Chronicles and the upcoming Invenius Expeditions, right after this quick break.
There we go. We're almost bringing on Christoph. This is all,
We are
Steve's got to edit all this stuff. Poor guy. Poor guy. Okay, here we go. Let's see. And I got my Zoom is there. Okay. Welcome to Deep Cuts, the bonus episode of the Scott Sigler Slices Fiction Podcast, where a sci-fi author and an audiobook narrator discuss things and stuff in the world of writing and content creation. I am Scott Sigler, sci-fi horror author known far and wide as the Future Dark Overlord.
And I am A.B. Sigler, publisher at Empty Set Entertainment and audiobook narrator. On this Deep Cuts, we're talking to Christoph Laputka, the brilliant creator of the Leviathan Chronicles, about how his 16 years of fiction podcasting led to his new blockbuster, the Invenius Expeditions.
A quick reminder, this is a bonus episode, not part of any particular tale. We'd love to have you listen to this, but if you're waiting for story information, it's not in this. Ready to get started?
I'm ready to get started. Christoph, how are you?
It is so great to be here. Hey, Scott, how are you guys?
Good.
Great.
Better now.
Good. What do you think of our little show here, buddy? We got going on. A little...
I am blown away. I love your fans. I love the jibber jab. I love the story. I mean, nothing like a little feasting on aliens. But it's no, this is terrific. It's so fun to be speaking with you guys who have so much experience with fiction podcasting. I mean, Scott, you were one of the first guys to really start this whole genre.
Yeah. It was, I believe it was shepherded by Evo Terra, but there was T. Morris and Mark Jeffrey and myself all kind of doing Hidden Idea at the same time, which was to podcast our own books, narrate them ourselves, release them as serialized episodes. And that, of course, led to several fun careers, and a lot of great other authors picked up that model and ran with it. And you were along pretty shortly after that, right?
Well, I got to be honest. I was listening to your stories when I was still working at my day job in New York, and I was so captivated not only by your writing and your stories, but also how you had, as an author, a relationship with the audience that I had never seen before, and the fact that we're doing the show right now is evidence of that. And I got really excited by that. I had always wanted to be a writer, and I was big into the sci-fi genre and writing a lot of the stories. And what I wanted to do was try and add sound effects and music to some of these stories, and use the same distribution model that that you helped pioneer.
So this was one of the questions that I was going to ask. You led right into it perfectly. When you still had your very successful day job, you wanted to write, you planned to write, you had these ideas. Did you ever write a prose version of any of your stories, or did it come out of your mind as full cast, full Foley, full sound effects, all that?
That's a great question. And originally, the hope was to go into prose. The idea was that this would be the podcast would be a launching pad to print publications, being in Barnes and Nobles, and it wasn't the sound effects were just going to be a little bit of flourish on it. But as we got deeper into the craft and trying to create this, we realized we needed to approach the Leviathan Chronicles more like a screenplay, more like a television show than a novel, and that came with its own challenges, but also its own advantages, because we were able to get so many great voice actors that had traditionally just been in films and media, and now we had all that acting talent to put into audio.
Now, currently, full cast audio dramas with sound effects and multicast completely dominate the fiction podcasting charts. Everything from Table Read to The White Room to the Fool and Scholar work to Old Gods of Appalachia. So now, someone coming into this space now has all of this reference material that they can listen to. Very well-produced, well-written, successful projects. When you started doing full cast with the sound effects, did you have any models, or were you kind of figuring it out on your own?
We really didn't have a lot to go with. There was one podcast, Children of the Gods, which was an old school sci-fi. Not old school. It was being done back in 2005, I think 2006, and they were doing kind of a space-based audio drama, and I thought that was pretty captivating. But there wasn't a lot there unless you kind of went back to like the 30s, 40s, and 50s in America, or you could listen to Doctor Who on the BBC side. But one of the things that was really important in creating Leviathan is we wanted it to sound contemporary, and not a lot of the older radio dramas had this kind of Broadway play aspect to it.
She opened up the door and walked inside, and she didn't believe what she saw.
Good to see you, darling. Where's my martini? Yeah, it was. And so the challenge was, how do we make this sound more immersive and more like a contemporary science fiction show that you would enjoy? And one of the creative decisions we made, and we do this in Leviathan Chronicles and Rapscallion and in Venios, is we used a narrator for an audio drama, which at the time was considered taboo and a violation of what audio drama was. But we knew that we wanted to have big sound effects and large set pieces that were going to be so complex that having the actors engage in unrealistic dialogue just to describe what was going on was going to diminish the overall experience. So
that in the current day, that is one of the things I come across as a listener that really takes me out of the story. The really convoluted, long-winded way of characters describing what they see, etc., in a way that we just don't actually communicate. It works very well, and those podcasts are very successful. But for my taste, the combination of a full cast and a narrator works extremely well, and that's
another thing that I think is really special about your creations, I'll call them. I don't think it's fair to call them full cast audio. I don't think it's fair to call them podcasts. They're really truly this unique experience. One of the reasons for that is you have long form stories. They are expansive stories, and all of that recording for full cast happened. Well, the vast majority of that, I'm assuming punch-ins sometimes happen with everybody physically together, and that's very rare for full cast audio. I know that Table Reads did it, but that was 3 episodes long.
Correct.
That is a huge, huge commitment to your work. And obviously it inspires what you created. But how did you come to decide that it had to be that way?
Yeah, it had to be that way. And spending the money to get all those people together.
For sure.
Which was a huge challenge back in the day. There were a lot of full cast projects when you got started and shortly after, where you couldn't listen to it because you could hear every speaker was in a different room and it took you out of the story. So to A's question and my compound question, like, how did you decide, like, I know what needs to happen. It's going to come at a cost. How did you get to that point?
Yeah, it helped that when we started Leviathan Chronicles, and again I'm going back to 2007, 2008. We were in New York City, and obviously we could draw from a pretty deep well of great acting talent and voiceover artists. And the studio that was doing all of the mixing for Leviathan Chronicles, they were called Silver Sound, and they had enough studio space that they were like, hey, listen, if you want to bring actors over, we'll do it at a pretty de minimis cost because we're doing all the engineering work as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a unique situation where we could bring people in, and what we heard then, and we hear it even more now, is with Riverside and all these kind of remote recording platforms. It is very uncommon for voice actors to work together anymore, and the industry is dominated. The voiceover industry is dominated by video games and stuff like that, where everybody's in isolation. So when you can get 5 actors in a booth together, you just amplify both the performance and their ability to express. But it does come at a cost, and that's why sometimes our episodes take a lot longer to come out because we have to schedule a lot more. We have to find days where we can get 6 actors together in the same room that are very busy with other jobs, and it just takes a little longer. But we think the result's worth it, and we try and create the some of the more cinematic audio dramas that are being put out now.
So this is the second time you have mentioned that you see your work as very cinematic, as do I. So I have several kind of clarifying questions around that. What are you? Are you the writer, producer, director? Are you the writer, director? Are you the director of photography? Like, how do you fit in when you're all in the same room together? And my part 2 is, are there dailies? Like, do you change things based on performances and stuff like that?
That is a great question. Well, to answer the first part, I am the writer of Leviathan Chronicles, Rapscallion Agency, and Venios Expeditions, and I've been the writer-director of Rapscallion and Venios. Nobi Nakanishi was the director for all of Leviathan Chronicles. But I think that was a great question in terms of like what role do I have if you're analogous to a Hollywood movie, and I'd say most of the producer, because finding the funding and dealing with all of the infrastructure that an audio drama takes is something I take on as well. But I do think there is an element of director of photography where how do I want to express taking the listener into a space? So when we go into a submarine, like I want to be able to take you through compartment after compartment after compartment. So how do we differentiate each compartment, each soundscape separately, and how do we manipulate kind of the panning and the 3D audio to give you a sense of motion as you're going through it? So there is a sense of flow that I think when you're building these soundscapes that you want to take into account. And a big part of when you're doing full cast audio drama, work with these effects, there is an opportunity to really take listeners to places that they could never imagine. Like, what does a blimp at 60,000 feet sound like? What does a cocktail party in London or a car chase through Athens sound like? And those are fun ideas to play with and then realize in the audioverse.
Now, are you, for the Venios Expeditions, are you still getting actors together in the same room so they can feed off each other's energy? And of course that probably changes the performance, and the director's right there too. I've done one full cast production where I just did my part on my mic, and across the internet a director was like, a little more like this, a little less like this, do something here. But there were no other actors in that scene because it's very much cost prohibitive. Are you still bringing people into the same room?
Well, for Venios Expeditions, it has been our biggest production to date. We have close to 100 actors in Venios Expeditions.
Whoa.
And we were able to get most of them. I mean, the real cost prohibitive thing, the hard thing is finding a studio that can accommodate more than 5-6 actors. So we We have some photos on our site and on our Patreon page that shows, us having 5-6 people in a booth together, and we did that a lot with Invenios, and a big part of that was really the story. So Invenios Expeditions is the second spin-off from the Leviathan Chronicles, and it takes two of our most popular characters, Captain Jeffrey Tully and his best friend and first mate, Oberlin St. Clair, and they get to build their dream research boat, the dream treasure hunting vessel, the Invenios. And this is a story of them building a crew and kind of their adventures on the high seas. So in building a crew, we wanted all of the 5-6 members of the team together. We want them recording, want them looking at each other and starting to build some of that dynamics of the crew. And obviously it's inspired by Star Trek and Star Wars, when a crew comes together, and we really wanted to foster that as you went into recording the show.
We did have a question in the chat about the 100 actors. Is it 100 actual different humans, or is it 100 characters with several actors doubling up?
We have close to, I think the number is 96 human actors, and they probably do a total of about 120 different voices.
Holy shit, dude!
Wow.
that go into it. And some of the voices are smaller bits, but one of the most difficult things to do in audio drama are crowd sounds, and we've got a couple big set pieces. I won't give too much away, but kind of a running of the bulls big set piece that we do. They're big scenes that take place in pirate camps in Somalia, and they just required a lot of voices to create. So we have a very international cast and diverse cast for the show, and we're just so excited. Like I said, it's our biggest show. We're going to be 13 to 14 episodes, I think, when all is said and done.
And how long is an episode?
Each one's clocking in at the average is around 45 to 50 minutes.
Jesus. You're making it hard. You're making it hard. Hey, I'm working this side of the street over here. You're making it hard for me to bring in bread, for crying out loud.
So we need to take a quick break.
Go ahead.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Yes, of course. Thanks, darling.
You guys are awesome.
You're killing us, dude. There's a lot of info I didn't know here, but let's get back to the recording. Here we go. Welcome back to Deep Cuts, where we talk about all things in the world of fiction writing and audiobook narration. Gosh darn, I did it again. How many effing times am I going to fucking... Steve, shut up. I don't want to fucking hear it. I don't want to hear a fucking word.
I'm laughing for all of us, Steve.
All right,
you need to fix the template.
I have fixed it 10 times. It just... I don't know what I'm doing. Here we go.
Let's go back to... We need to take a quick break and go from
you want to go from that? Okay, ready? And
for Steve,
3, 2, 1, and...
We need to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this.
And now that I've got that shut off, here we go. Welcome back to Deep Cuts, where we talk about all things in the world of fiction writing and audiobook narration.
We are talking to storyteller Christoph Laputka about his 16 years of podcast fiction and his upcoming title, The Invenios Expeditions. Welcome back.
Great to be back.
Before we took that break, I was complaining that you're making it hard for us working stiffs to put something together that can compare to 100,000 actors all crammed into one booth. It's a Keystone Cops things. It's a little bit nuts, but really you're putting so much into the production, and there are full cast audio is now. People are putting a lot of money into it. Netflix is doing it. Audible's doing it. Realm is doing it, getting, A, B, C list actors, bringing them in, and the budgets are going up and up. But even then, it's 5, 6, 7 people get in a room and shoot the whole thing. If they're together at all, which I doubt most of them are, they're doing remotes. Talk just a little bit more to us about the value for performance of getting these people together so they can look at each other when they do the show.
Well, it's really important because in part of the lore that we have in Leviathan Chronicles are that there are these groups and forces at work, and we have secret divisions of the CIA known as the Black Door Group, and they kind of operate. And we have a new kind of environmental terrorism group called Evaterra. You have the Leviathan Immortals, and you've got all these different factions. And what we always want to do is make sure that the factions are acting and working together, because that adds to the familiarity and the performance, and just gives them, just a stronger sense of the characters when they can reflect themselves off each other. But again, this Invenios Expeditions was our, as I said, our biggest show. It took us. It's been about 2 years that we've been working on this, almost daily to try and get this out. But again, we have a big part of it. A big part of the show takes place in Somalia, so we really got to work with a whole slew of actors that that
awesome.
we really hadn't worked with before, that had these great East African accents. And I'm a huge, I love working with accents. I think they're so, they give such a sense of place, and I just think people's tones are so interesting, that it was fun to have all these actors together, and many of them originally from Somalia,
I'm
and that
so
was it was a
excited.
challenge to cast, but it
I
was fun.
bet. Gosh, I bet. I'm really excited. I do want to take a minute because the chat room has been buzzing with a lot of lovely things I want you to hear about Leviathan Chronicles and your other stories.
Oh,
Right at the beginning, Cobalt in the YouTube chat room said, "Thank you so much for Leviathan Chronicles. Great work, fantastic cast, great sound effects and music. Fantastic." Let's see. There's a few others that are lovely.
oh, I'm making my day here.
Uh, Michael Moore says, let's see. I can't. I read it, but I can't find it.
There it is. Cobalt, try to do Cobalt's.
You just jump in.
Cobalt USA says Leviathan Chronicles stands out among the full cast audio dramas. Michael Moore says Leviathan Chronicles set the bar for full cast,
Yeah.
and that's some high praise, because there's just great stuff coming out now. The remember, we've all
Yeah.
been doing this for 15 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
There is a whole slew of creators out now who were 7 to 12 to 13 years old when they first heard their first podcast. And now they are full grown, mature adults, and they are producing things the same way that I first read Stephen King and said, I want to do that. And now there's a lot of people who have figured out for a long time how to do what you do, Christoph, and they're bringing it all to the table. So, and from that perspective, how does it feel to be kind of an influence on this relatively new art form?
I mean, it's incredibly humbling, and I'm so appreciative of people that, when I get to meet other audio drama creators and say they started listening to the Leviathan Chronicles. That's incredible and mind blowing. But it's exciting to see, not just how many people are now getting into audio drama, but also how they're expanding the genre. And there's shows like Midst, and obviously Casey Whalen's We're Alive, which doesn't use a narrator and has a different feel to it. Um, and I think before there was a formula to how audio drama was going to work. Like we kind of talked about in the 40s, it was like, the clip clop of shoes and the door slam. And now, because so many more people are getting into it, because now it's so easy to distribute podcasts, and it's also so much easier now to work with sound libraries, that there is so much creativity coming into audio drama right now, that I think it's having a renaissance that it hasn't had in 60 years. And it's really exciting to see some of the new shows that are coming out, and the directions that people are taking it.
We have in the YouTube chat room Martin Evans, who is a professional musician. So I want to read one more beautiful comment, because coming from someone who knows audio, it's lovely. When listening to the Leviathan Chronicles, when the ship surfaced and the people were talking, the way the audio opened up and changed to a more open space was amazing. And that's that little thing that you're talking about, that ability to really cinematically create just with sound this absolute picture. And that's especially, I agree with Martin, in the Leviathan Chronicles, that's especially true. Like, it's not I hear them walking, it's I am walking with them, because the things around you change as you go. Like, I don't want to call it a Doppler effect, but there's that. It feels like I am right there with them, not watching them walk. And it's wonderful.
I think that's a great way to encapsulate it. It's We want you on the shoulder of our actors as they go through these journeys. And um, it's again going back to how you almost use the soundscape as another character in the show.
Right,
and
right.
and in when we were doing Invenios expeditions, part of the fun of this new show is the ship, the Invenios. And listeners can go to our Patreon page. That's patreon.com/Leviathan Chronicles. And we actually have blueprints of the ship that Tully and Oberlin build. And what's fun about that is, as we build the soundscape for the ship, there's going to be iconic sounds when certain vehicles get deployed and certain recurring effects happen. Like in Battlestar Galactica, remember when the Vipers would shoot out,
Oh my God, yes.
of the ship? Like, that sound instantly. Like, even if you had no video to go with it, and they would just use the same clip over and over again,
Yeah.
but it worked. And it was the Galactica was one of the characters in the show, and we wanted Invenios to be like Galactica, to be like the Enterprise, to be like Knight Rider, and these great vehicle driven procedurals that we used to enjoy, in the 80s and 90s. So using the sound effects lets us bring this ship to life.
So a couple more comments from the chat room. By the way, if you're listening to this podcast, we do this show live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can join us at youtube.com/Scott Sigler, twitch.tv/Scott Sigler, or facebook.com/Scott Sigler. We do it every week. We would love to have you. Chris Grawl in the chat room. Chris Grawl is a voice actor and an audiobook narrator himself. He describes your recording process with 100 plus actors. It's like a clown car, only with a studio and actors. Dawn Shipley in the chat room says, she says, thank you so much for the Leviathan Chronicles, which is great. A lot of love for We're Alive in the chat room.
Of course, makes
sense. Cobalt
Huge,
says,
huge.
We're Alive was awesome. William Zapata says, yo, We're Alive is the truth. And I can't find it now, but William, you did ask if there will be a Nocturnal 2. Yes, just stay alive. Stay alive and I will find you. Stay alive. I will get to that no time soon. No time soon whatsoever. Yeah. Well, I didn't tell you, did I?
No.
Okay.
So let's see. I do have a sort of a throwback question to, you sort of mentioned at the beginning of the call, while you still had your day job, you were thinking about becoming a full-time writer. You were thinking about becoming a storyteller. What was that a lifelong thing? Did you always want to tell stories? And, your day job was just the day job that was worth having at the time. And if so, what creative things did you do before Leviathan Chronicles?
I didn't get the opportunity to do anything creative before Leviathan Chronicles. It was a burning desire. And when I was walking to work and listening to Scott's show, I was impressed. I was envious. It was really an inspiration, and to see that there was a passionate author had a direct line to an audience that didn't exist. And I can't express this to your listeners enough. Like that medium, that mechanism didn't exist prior to 05 or whatever date we want to put on it. There was always so many gatekeepers to get your ideas out. And it just felt so liberating to have this new podcasting medium take a hold of it. But no, I was, the day job really allowed me to self-finance Leviathan in the initial stages when, it would have been impossible to get anybody to invest. There was no Patreon. There was no monetization on the internet to support what we were doing.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful from that perspective, but I will tell you, like, it was something I had to keep secret and under my hat. I was working
Is that right?
In finance, and like I was sneaking out at night. We were doing some of these studio recordings at like 9-10 o'clock at night because I was getting off the office and going over to the studio. And I'll tell you that there was an interview that I had like after the financial crisis, and this guy's like, okay, what have you been doing for the past year? And I went through what I was working on Leviathan. I built this podcast, and he's like, well, well, why do you want a job here? It sounds like what you're doing is way more interesting, and it was like, and it was also like, it was like, hey, you might be too interesting to work here. And the answer is I probably would have gotten that job had I kept Leviathan quiet. So
Mm,
it was a secret identity, and side hustles were looked down upon, especially creative ones.
okay.
And so now being able to do it full time is kind of like, coming out of the closet. It's great.
Well, I have to jump in to say, now back in those days, I also had a day job, and it was a great job, great company, great people, loved it. But I was going into the office at 3 o'clock in the morning because they had a full recording studio. So I would go at 3 o'clock in the morning, record an hour to 2 hours of audio for Earthcore, and then get out of there, get like 30, 40 minutes of sleep, then come back and show up. Or sometimes I would just pretend to be like, oh, I'm the first person at the office because I work so hard. and that was, I don't think it was quite as restrictive as your situation was at the time. But there was also this whole like, hey, I have this job. People are relying on me. I'm getting paid good for this job. I'm now going to lose sleep and sneak away to do this creative thing because I am pursuing my passion, the thing that makes me feel alive as a person, makes me happy, it fulfills my soul. And more importantly for me, and the question is it like this for you? The best part of my job is getting reactions like we've had in this chat room for you tonight, that you have really connected with people and you have touched people's lives and you have given them a bright spot that they would not have otherwise had if it was not for the stuff that could only come out of your mind. Is that part of the rush for you? And what does it feel like when someone tells you that and praises your work? Because that work would not have existed if it wasn't for Christoph Lapuka.
It is not just it's the best feeling in life. I mean, I couldn't live without it now. It's Leviathan Chronicles and the show and the universe. It's something that is now a part of my daily existence. That's what same way I'm sure the Sigler verse is. You're always talking to your characters in your head. You're always exploring, new parts of the world or new parts of the universe. And what has really been terrific about the Leviathan Chronicles has been the interaction that I've been able to have and our crew has been able to have with fans, and going to different cities around the country, around the world, and people that want to get together and meet with you and talk about your work is just it's flabbergasting and gratifying and exciting and nourishing. The plethora of online communities that you have now, like again, like even if you loved Stephen King back in the year 2000, how do you tell Stephen King you like him? Like there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't any there wasn't any online forums. I mean, maybe on Usenet or something, but now you can create communities, and artists need communities. They need the community of other artists. And writing is a lonely business. What you and I do is a lot of sitting in a metaphorical cabin trying to figure stuff out. And you don't get to talk to other writers enough, especially in real life, and you don't get to talk to your fans. And the fans that I know, junkies are literally some of the best people and the best fans on the internet, in the world. And it's inspiring. And I look at all the ways that you guys work so hard to make sure your fans know how much you appreciate them, and we try and do the same thing, because the fact that we've been able to do Leviathan Chronicles for 16 years, we've had some real gaps in our production, just because things take so long and life gets in the way. But our fans have stuck by us, and it's allowed us to be one of the longest running audio dramas. So we wouldn't be anywhere without our fans, and interacting with them is literally the best part of what we do.
So we need to wrap things up pretty soon and let everybody get on with their day. But I am going to put you a little bit on the spot. I should have asked you this before because I don't want to tell about your personal life. But I'm going to say this. I love my friendship with you. I love that we're friends. I know you have an adventurous heart. I'll say it that way. A lot of the things that you do in your personal life, adventurous. Did that influence the type of stories that you created? Because in my mind, they sort of I can see the adventurer every time I listen. So sorry to put you on the spot there, but inside baseball
No,
question.
that's wonderful. And by the way, you both of you are some of my dearest friends, and I'm so freaking lucky to count you guys as my compadres. Yes, I do have some. I do like to live an adventurous life, and scuba diving and underwater exploration has always been a passion of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I love technical diving. I've been doing it for over 20 years, and wanting to bring people underwater and discover and feel the mystery of what's underwater was definitely something that shaped the Invenios expeditions and and just a love of travel and other cultures was something that we wanted to have in Leviathan, to take you all over the world on a global espionage adventure where sci-fi meets James Bond, and just using sound for it was such an exciting mission. And as a passionate traveler, I really wanted to bring our listeners to all the places that I got to visit and adventures that I wanted to have.
Oh, fantastic. So you need to tell everybody who's listening where they can learn more about you.
Sure. So the best place to learn about Leviathan Chronicles and Rapscallion and our new show, the Invenios Expeditions, is to go to our website, leviathanaudioproductions.com. You'll see all of our shows there. And if you want to listen to a sneak preview of the Invenios Expeditions, we have one of the first finished episodes. It's one of our prologues called Operation Riverwolf. And you can go to patreon.com/Leviathan Chronicles to listen to that episode, see the blueprints for the Invenios Expeditions, and a whole lot more. And that's our Patreon page is really the hub of our community going forward. So we're really hoping that we'll grow the community. You can join for free and get newsletters and listen to episodes. So we hope to see you all there.
Thank you so much.
Great. That is fantastic. Christoph, thank you so much for being on Deep Cuts. It is wonderful to be with one of the OGs of podcast fiction in general, possibly the godfather of full cast audio. I mean, it's you and We're Alive, like neck and neck for like, who really made this shit happen? And it's you guys. But thank you so much for being on our show. And I won't lie, we love you. You're fantastic. We can't wait till we get to hang out again.
Love you guys so much. See you soon.
See ya.
And now comes the unceremonious part of the show where we just boot the fuck out of our guest because we don't know how to end anything gracefully. We just kicked him off of Zoom. Goodbye. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for us for this episode of Deep Cuts.
Sorry.
That is it for this episode of Deep Cuts.
Next episode, we'll be talking about what actually constitutes a, quote, Christmas movie, end quote, including Scott Sigler's rules for the Christmas movies.
There must be rules. There must be structure. Without rules, society collapses into a madhouse of anarchy. And I will no longer listen to all of these people spout out of all of their orifices, this is a Christmas movie. This is a Christmas movie. This isn't a Christmas movie. I will be the decider for what constitutes a Christmas movie, and I will give you the rules by which you can follow along.
Come back and join us next week.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Babe, you crushed it. Great job.
Thanks.
That was fucking lights out.
Thanks.
Way to go.
There's a few things that I do want to tell you guys and a question I want to ask because you guys are the faithful who are always here.
Love you.
We have a Wednesday, 2 weeks from today, 3 days from today. Christmas is on a Wednesday, you guys. Christmas is on a Wednesday. And so we want to know, and specifically from you guys who are still here, still paying attention, do you want a Christmas Day Sigler in place?
Yeah.
Do you want, which would be a little bit more difficult for us because my parents live about an hour and a half away. My mom is in the chat room. I love you very much, Mama. Or a Christmas Eve one? Or would you rather do like Monday the 23rd so you can have your whole junky Christmas party and then do all the other things? So let us know in the chat room. Let us know by email at info@emptyset.
Yeah, send that to info@emptyset because we got to tap out here in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing is the last day for shipping which I'll tell everybody, but the last day for shipping, if you want it domestically by Christmas, you have to order by December the 16th.
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing that I will tell you guys is next week, our guest is George Schraub.
No, that's 2 weeks.
Oh, that's 2 weeks? Oh, yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks
from
from now. And we're done recording, so you can use weeks. Right.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So it's 2 weeks from now. On the 18th of December, we have George Schraub talking about his new
Oh my
Christmas
God.
album.
You guys, if you guys are not familiar with George, you guys
wrote my favorite song.
can't even prepare you for what a dope motherfucker this guy is. He is just the sickness. He's so fucking cool and so nice and so unbelievably talented. We are just beside ourselves to have him on the show. We might even talk about playing a couple of songs for you guys.
Maybe. I told him, we got to see him last month, and I told him, and he was surprised by it, that he wrote my favorite song ever. And he was quite surprised.
What's that song
by it.
again?
Everything Alive Will Die Someday.
It's not a happy song.
It is a happy song.
It sounds jaunty and happy. It's like what's that, White Wine in the Sun? Who's that?
Yeah,
Tim
White Wine
Minchin?
in the Sun is Tim Minchin.
Tim
That
Minchin.
is a Christmas song. I don't care
Oh
what
my
you
God.
say.
Yeah. Okay.
So we will be
My
back
rules.
next week with Christmas movies up for discussion. And
But-
it's certainly looking like we'll do Monday Christmas week. The
Probably
23rd.
Monday Christmas week. But you know what? Jot this down. Info at Empty Set. You guys are the diehards, as I mentioned. Please just throw us a quick email. Let us know when you would like the Christmas episode, and we will do that. Fortunately, George Schraub is pre-Christmas.
It's true. Pre-Christmas on the 18th.
That was fabulous. You
We are
guys
so
check
glad
out.
you
Check
guys-
out if
oh.
you've not heard Leviathan Chronicles. Go check it out. It is so over the top. So everything I write, I try to build from normalcy, subnormalcy, up through like, ooh, interesting things are happening, and then an exponential shift, and then my endings are all completely over the top. The endings to my work, I shoot for summer blockbuster, tentpole productions. All the budget for the movie go like 100 million of the 120 million all goes in the last third of the book. It's a big bang ending. Christoph ain't got time for that shit. Leviathan Chronicles is full budget, over the top from episode 1. It's just nonstop. It's really intense stuff. So check it out. Hope you guys like it.
So we'll be back next week. Thank you guys for hanging out with us.
David Lamb says, good luck to... Good, let's go back to Maine and let's bring that up one more time. He says, good luck to your cousin Merciless and Superwoman tomorrow night. I won't lie. Cousin Merciless is nervous as fuck about this show.
Yeah, well,
Because it's one thing when you're live and in a live show, Martin, if he's still in the chat room, can attest to this. In a live musical performance, you can make up for all kinds of problems by just sheer intensity and dynamics and stepping to the front of the stage and engaging people. A live stream, yes, that's not there. That's not there. So it's going to be a very interesting show. Very interesting show. Mark's in the house. Mark Olela, who is a guest on Deep Cuts.
hey, Mark, nice to see
Mark
you.
says, good luck to the Lions on Thursday night. Thank you very much, Mark. Hopefully that goes very well for the Lions.
I am going to be at home monitoring the Lions game while he's live streaming from the Wildcat Studios.
Yes. So that is it for us this evening. You are all fantastic. You all do smell an enormous amount like flowers. I would like to point that out. And now I'm going to switch back to the,
Hello.
what I call the pretty cam. But of course, it's not a pretty cam unless this gorgeous creature is on the cam too. But that is it for us. We are now going to stop streaming. You guys have a great night.